Okay, welcome back everyone, Mark Sargent again, and today we will add some muscles, only tiny muscles to our rig, and we will also add the eyes. So let's start with the eyes. First of all, here's the figure. The eyes are there, those are just not visible yet. So let me go up here, look for the Layer Explorer, open it up, and there's a chance it will appear somewhere else on your panel. But mine is docked here on the left side, and there is a separated layer. That's a prepared one, so I just have to enable visibility, and voila, here we go, we have the eyes. Now if you don't see the texture, please check, press M, open up Material Editor. If your Material Editor is different, you might want to change the mode to Compact Material Editor. And here we go, we have the second sample called 02 Default. Let me rename it to Fred Eye. And we have a basic parameter. Under the diffuse, there is a map loaded in the channel. So map. And that particular map is this Fred Eye diffuse. If you don't have it loaded or you want to locate the file, you can click on this big button and look for the location, and here's this kind of a flowery shaped texture that is our map for the eyeball. Alright, these are not detailed textures, but they're great to get a sense of the look of the figure. Now the material channel is open here, so let me switch to the body, and that will be Fred and body. And the diffuse channel is also containing a material. This is a Fred body diffuse. It is just not visible. Why? Because here the show shaded material in viewport is turned off. So let me turn it on, and now we have a shaded model. Okay, with some basic diffuse textures. Alright, we needed to use the textures because it's pretty hard to adjust the eyeball if you don't see an iris or anything like that. Okay, now the next step will be we have to create a couple helpers for the eyes. So the first thing, let me go to the Create panel. This one is not needed, so let me close the Layer Manager and Helpers, and we need Standard Helper, a Point Helper. Let me place this point helper in the front viewport, because the front viewport, the active grid is the back, this back grid, and if I'm going back to the perspective, it's quite close to the eye already. Alright, so this is why I'm using the front viewport to create this point helper. And let me place this point helper right at the position of the eye. To do that, I will use the Align. This is the Align, so point helper selected, Align, and I'm clicking on the eyeball, and here we go. We have positions and orientation alignment. I want to make sure that all of the positions, so X, Y, Z, pivot point positions are matching, and also the orientations are matching as well. Okay, so let me press OK, and now everything is oriented accordingly. Something happened here. Let me isolate these two because it's not perfectly matching, so let me troubleshoot this. So here's the eyeball, here's the center of the eyeball, and here is the point helper. So let me go to the Hierarchy panel, Affect Objects, Pivot Only. Let me select this guy. Okay, Alt A, click on the eyeball, and now the position and everything is fine. Okay, so by default it should be okay from the beginning. Here just made some kind of an error, but actually it's quite surprising. Alright, now next, once we have this particular one, we can add some adjustments. Usually a box is a little bit better to have, so including right beside the cross, a box is a little bit easier on the eye, so it's much more easier to recognize the position of this point helper in the 3D space. So this is why I like to add this box feature as well. And of course we have two eyes, so let me shift and drag, double it, and this process is the same. Alt-A, align, and clicking on the eyeball, and as you see right now the position is perfect. So there was some kind of an error here. Let me press OK. So we have two of these helpers for each eye. Now what else? There's another helper needed. It will be called an up node. Okay, so let me go to the front view and create a point helper. But this will be a little bit different in the look. So instead of using the cross and the box option, I will choose the axis triplet, and let me make it smaller. So I'm making these adjustments before creating the actual item. So, and snap is turned on because I want to make sure that it is right in the center. So let me click in here, and snap is turned off. Right click, exit, and go into perspective. So that will be my up node. Now why do we care about this up node? Because these eyes may rotate a little bit weird manner if we don't have an up node location. I will show it just a sec. We just need to create the elements. So point helpers are created. These will act like eye sockets for the eyeballs. This will be a guide for the orientation of the eyeballs during the rotation and the movements of the head. What we also need, we need to create a control object. So let me go back to the front viewport, and from the create shapes is selected, and what we need is called a circle, and snap is also needed again. So S and snap and drag it out, and okay, quite good with the size. So this is a basic simple circle. Snap is not needed anymore. Turn it off. Right click because I don't want to create any more circles, and just go to perspective. Now hold on for a second. This particular circle will be in front of the character, but we have to make sure that the center of this circle is in line with the eye level. So what I have to do, I have to pull this down, but I don't want to guess. If I don't want to guess, if I want to make it absolutely perfect, I can use the align as well in this situation. So let me go align to the eye, but here something else needs to be adjusted. So what we only need to do, we don't want to adjust the orientation, because can you see the orientation? Because of this orientation, our circle just flipped. So let me turn this off, the orientation. And I don't want to pick the X position, only the Y and the Z position. Alright, X position will move it aside. So if I turn this off, X position, it will be fine, and I don't want to keep the axis orientation, so we don't want to copy that. Let me press OK. Here we go. This is it. Let me pull it out. Okay, pretty cool. Eyes will follow this particular target. To make a little bit easier to select and recognize this shape, I like to use a tiny trick. So let me go to the modify panel, and right now it's in the rendering area. This enable in viewport is turned off. If I turn it on, it will create a mesh around the circle. That makes it a little bit easier to select if you are in a viewport. For example, if you are in the side view, it is much more visible than just watching the tiny stroke. So enable in viewport is a good choice. Another thing, because we have a mesh now, mesh generated, we don't need that many sides. So sides, F4 to see the number of the sides. Sides are just ridiculously increase, so let me revert them back to 3. So now we have a 3-sided mesh, and also we don't need that many of the segments. So let me go to interpolation, and right now the steps of interpolation is 6. If I go and reduce it to 1, there's kind of a stop sign shape, and this one is enough. Okay, so this was fair enough. It's good enough as a target reference. Okay, now one thing that can cause us problems is the pivot point orientation. So pivot point orientation is the same thing that we did with the Joe and the Joe mesh to control the Joe mesh. So we have to make sure that the eye, the pivot point of the eye is our leader. So we'll try to make everything match and fit in position and alignment according to the eye. So one eyeball is selected, and let me go to the hierarchy, pivots, and affect pivot only, and this one is active. Alright, so the blue is pointing upwards, X, these are the standard orientations, just like the world orientation. If you select any of the point helpers that we aligned with all the settings enabled, those will show the same orientation. There's a chance if we're selecting this particular guy, we have a mismatch. Okay, we don't want to have that. Also, let me click on the controller, and as you see the controller, this blue, instead of pointing upwards, this one's pointing along with the Y axis. Okay, so we don't want any difference here. So our main goal here is matching the orientation. To do that, we will use the align, click on the eyeball, but I don't want to move the pivot point. Alright, so position is not checked, but we want to pick the orientation. Okay, so because align position was not enabled, we have no change in the position of this pivot point. But because orientation was enabled, the orientation of the eyeball was copied to the eye controller. Okay, let me press OK. We will do the same thing with this particular gizmo. So Alt A again, click on the eyeball, and because the previous settings is remembered, we don't have to do anything. Just press OK and turn off affect pivot only. So now all of these are matching. This is a it's quite embarrassing if you miss this, because it's much harder to recognize where is the error, and it can create a conflict with the rotations. So positions are fairly easy to manage, but once you start rotating an object in 3D space, and once you try to make the connections between the elements, it can cause a little bit of trouble. You can do it many other ways. This is just another option that helps to create a smooth and nice solution. So here we go. We have this eyeball, and we have to link first the eyes to the eye sockets. So one eyeball is selected. Let me go to select and link, and it's quite hard to pick, so I like to rotate the screen to make a tiny part visible of the point helper, because I want to link the eyeball to a point helper. Okay, let me select the other eye. Other eye is selected to its dedicated point helper. Okay, now point helpers are, of course, these are moving with the eye bone, with the head bone. So socket helper selected, and let me choose the head bone. Release left mouse button. Socket selected. The other side, let me choose the head. Release. Okay, now we have it. So if I'm selecting the head, switch to a rotation, and let me check the move. okay, I'm in animation mode, so I don't mess up anything. If I start to move this around, now the eyes are flowing. Okay, so that's a quite good solution as a first part. But of course, we want to make sure that the eyes are looking at a particular target. So for that, let me select each of the eyes and go to animation and select constraints, and we'll choose a look at constraint. Now, look at constraint and orientation constraint, these are pairs because both of them are affecting the rotation. Alright, so look at is also a rotational type of constraint. So select these, click on the target, and now we have two target lines. Alright, don't be surprised, this may happen with you. And this is why we need a texture, because the eyes, if you don't have a texture, it's quite hard to recognize that we have something flipping going on. So to remove that flipping, let me select one of the eyes, go to the motion panel, and because look at constraint is a rotational type of constraint, let me click on rotation. Let me select look at from the list because this is what I want to adjust. And what I have to do is to turn on this keep initial offset. So keep initial offset. So this is our starting point. Now let me select the other eye and repeat the process. So keep initial offset. Here we go. It's pretty cool. Okay, let me select the eye target and let me move it away. So this is what happens now. We can move the eyes. How cool is that? Okay, let me undo. I don't want to move it too much because this is our origin. This is our base position. So for that, because we are still rigging, we can create a transformation 0. So once we have the look at constraint assigned, we can select the eye target, alt right click, and freeze transform. And yes, we want to freeze the transform. And what it makes, if I move it away and alt right click, transform to 0, I can revert it back. Alright, it's good for zeroing out the animation or anything similar. Okay, we are almost there, but we have to use the up node. Now let me explain what is the reason to have an up node. So head is selected, animation is turned on, animation mode is turned on. There's no animation here, so let me switch to E, rotation, and rotate the head around. Okay, so because we have a look at constraint, the eyeballs will always stay on focus. Let me undo this and look for a different type of rotation. But for that, we need F4 to make it visible, to make the wires visible. Now this rotation is the following. So if I'm rotating side by side, if I'm tilting the head, you just have to recognize that this particular area of the mesh, so this star is a good help. If I'm start rotating, that star is moving. So what does it mean? The eye is rotating within the socket. So one axis is not locked. Alright? Here, because we have a fairly simple texture, it makes no issue. It's not really a problem because every area is the same. But if you have a painted texture, it will be really weird to see that the eyeball is rolling some unnatural manner in the eye socket. So what we have to do is we have to use the up node. Okay, for that, let me select the up node. And let me select the eyeball, go to the motion panel, look for rotation, select look at constraints, and we have an option called select up node. Now to make this button enabled, let me turn off world and none will be switched to 0.3. Let me repeat the same process, or actually we can compare. So before we're doing this, let me rotate it around, and now the up node is working, but the up node is not moving with the head. So what I have to do is select the up node and link the up node to the head bone. Okay, and if I start rotating now the head bone, you can see the difference. Can you see this eye is following the up node, and because the up node is moving with the head, it will always match. But the other eye, the left eye in this situation, is rotating in the eye socket. Okay, so can you see the difference? This is why we need to use the up node. Alright, Ctrl Z. We want to get back to the normal level. Yes, and select the other eye, look at constraint, and where we are, world, none, and clicking on here. Okay, so that's it. Head is selected. If we are rotating it, now the eyes are part of the movements and rotating according to the position of the head. Okay, so that was for the eye, and here comes the cat muscle. Now, cat muscles are great little tools, but usually we don't start right at the beginning using cat muscles, because they can mean a lot of work and a lot of adjustments. So use them wisely, but let me show the principle of using a cat muscle, because it's really an interesting feature to have. So what we do have as a problem is this particular area where the mesh is collapsing of the at the leg. So we have to remove that, but the skinning makes it hard. So here's the skin. So let me select the skin, turning on the envelopes. All the envelopes are adjusted here, but nothing else. So this is just a basic thing. And as you see, I have a conflict with the envelopes. These are fairly tiny envelopes. This was a little bit big, and honestly, this is a kind of a delicate detail. So we have a fairly big stretch on the ground facing part, but here it's quite a narrow section that we have to perform a lot of controlled deformation. So to make it a little bit nicer and smoother, we can and we have to use a cat muscle. So let me put this aside and turn off geometry by pressing Shift G. So we have a fresh pure skeleton here, and let me go to the Create panel and Helpers and Cat Objects. And muscle strand is a kind of a rope type of a muscle. Cat muscle is much more like a plane. It's like the chest muscle. It looks a little bit weird at first, but once you start shaping it, you can recognize the power of the cat muscle. So let me click on cat muscle, and I will create it here on the side first. And right click, I don't want to create anymore. And as you see, we have these panels, but the big deal is we have handles. So the corner points are the actual kind of attachment points. Okay, so these are the attachment points. Each of the attachment points has their own handle. Alright, so you can fine-tune how this muscle is located. Now these are just representing the idea, so okay, please don't be scared because of this ugly looking planes. These are just indicating the stretch. These are just showing the way you make the transformation. So let me undo this. And before making all the adjustments, we have to make a decision. Do we really need that much of segments? No, absolutely not. So let me go to the Modify panel, select one of the muscle parts, and we need to reduce the segments to 2 by 2. Actually, that's fair enough. We don't need any more. So 2 by 2, and let me select all of these and move it up and locate it. So I can say, okay, so here we go. I will start from here, and now it's a little bit needs some attention. So let me select the last handles, move them here. Okay, move them to the bottom. This particular corner will be linked to this bone at the end. This particular controller will be linked to this one. So what I have to do is moving it a little bit closer here, even lift it up a little bit. This one looks fine. Maybe just an angle, a slight angle change. Okay, this will be fine. All right, here, let me do the same. Move it closer, even rotate it slightly. Okay. Select this one, move it closer, rotate it slightly. Okay, we have some kind of an overlap here with the handles, so let me go, move. Actually, if you remember, we can use local mode, so local move. Also the other guy, it's pretty hard to select it, even for me, so don't be surprised if you have some struggle with that. Okay, that's fairly nice. Let me give some room to this. Alright, and actually these are way too long, so let me pull this back. This handle as well, and probably these as well to create some balance. Okay, I don't want to create any stress points, so make it as balanced as possible. But what we can do, we can add an arc. So what does it mean? Right now the muscle is stretched as it is. When you start moving the feet, the muscle will not recognize, okay, where do I need to put my arc? If you create an arc prior, so like pulling this, the fold of the muscle will be a little bit more natural. Okay, so this is it. Now, before we are moving on, I don't know if it works or not, but because it is a symmetrical element, I have to make a copy of this muscle. But if you make the links before you're making the mirrored muscle, that can give you a headache. So before we are linking, before we are making these muscles parts of the skin modifier, we are just creating the mirror version of it. And if we are not satisfied, we can always delete that, but this is a step you have to make at first. So here's the muscle, and instead of selecting a mirror or a copy or something else, we will actually go in the create panel, create another cat muscle, and just place it on this area. Okay, now here comes the trick. This will be kind of a blank muscle, just to recognize that we have an object. So let me create this guy, select this guy, go to the modify panel, and this muscle is actually a right-sided muscle. So let me rename this Fred rig, because it is part of our rig, and it will be an R because it's the right side, and underscore and muscle, and an underscore. Okay, so what does it mean? If I'm selecting anything, we have these muscles, and all of these muscles are named according to our original naming, right? So every part of this particular muscle will be named to Fred rig R muscle, and then the code. Okay, so let me select back again a piece of the muscle, and this one is right now it's a median muscle, so it's a middle muscle. What we have to do is to make sure that we are just setting this to a right side. Okay, so this is a right side muscle. The mirror axis will be X. And now we can make a copy of it. So let me copy the muscle settings. Now let me go here to this side. This would be a left side muscle, so let me enable left side. And let me paste muscle settings. And here we go. We have the same muscle, what we did on the right side, and every properties are copied. And now this is the situation when we can actually link the muscles on the right side to the bones. So let me zoom in. Let's select the control corner. So select and link. So this controlling element will be linked to the foot. This control to the foot. So these two are already linked. You don't want to link the handles. Okay, don't link the handles. We can also select this, and that one is linked to the finger. And we have another one that was linked to the other finger. So once we have the links, we can test if this muscle is moving with the rig. Yes, it is lifting up and stretches out. Okay, it looks fairly nice. Now this is why we needed the arcing. Okay, so as I start moving and the feet actually is closing like a hand because it's a frog, you can see how the arc is performed, and that's what we're looking for. Alright, so let me go back and let me test this with the skin. So Shift G and select the model envelope, and this is the right muscle, so the right set of muscle. So from the bones add option, we need to pick the muscles of the right side. So where we are, muscle 001, and here is muscle R, R1, R10. So these are the muscles. Let me select them, and here we go. Envelopes just appeared. So 4 envelopes. We have 4 new envelopes. And let me test this movement. So clicking away, and because I want to make sure that I see the deformations as pure as possible, I'm just selecting the mesh and pressing Alt Q to isolate it. So I don't want to be disturbed by all the bones and settings and everything. So let me lift this up. Can you see how this stretch is just much smoother, so we don't have to worry about that mesh is collapsing? And can you see how nice it is? So when the feet are actually folding over something, that's much more smoother. So okay, this means it's working nicely. I don't even have to adjust any of the envelopes. Alright, so this is kind of a fine-tuning process. So once you have fairly good envelope settings, you don't have to worry about adding muscles here and there, but it's a slow process, so you have to discover these things. So let me exit. Shift G, because I don't want to see the geometry. We have to repeat the same process on the other side. So linking first. Go to select and link, select and link, and select and link, release, and this particular handle to this particular bone, this one to this bone. Alright, Shift G, and let me select the bone, and the renaming was not, so it's not named properly. So let me select the original bone, copy the name. This is the root name. Copy. Select the other side. Paste it. But paste it with an L. Okay. So right. Okay. Now we have the right naming. Okay. Updated. So select the mesh, go to the envelope settings, and look for the add bone. And what we do need to look for the default layer, and we need the L muscles, L muscle 0, 0, 1, 10, and 11. So everything where you see a letter instead of the number, those are the handles. Okay, so those are the handles. Now let me select this. And here we go. Actually, I don't test it now. I'm pretty sure it's worked fine. If not, I can still mirror the right side to the left one. But that's it about muscles, the theory of using muscle, and creating a cat and eye for this particular rig. So thank you very much, and see you next time.